Hello, and welcome to the Brighten Your Day podcast.
You know, we think we have our plans and then life turns out the way it wants to anyway. It's fun and it's joyful, and life is meant to be fun and joyful. Bringing that perspective into parenting is one of my biggest passions of life for sure. I remember the first time I had a big production interview and I had a water bottle and I was crinkling it over and over and over again. And they're like, okay, you can't. And I was very stoic and serious. The first time it was for a commercial for United Way. Mm. And then they said, no, it's okay to show some emotion when you're telling your story. And then I started bawling. And they're like, okay, cut. Everybody go out of the room. You're like, okay. It was really intense. And that was a really long, almost 15 years ago. And so every time since then that I've been interviewed for different things or on podcasts, it's like that kind of tries to come back into my mind. And I'm like, no, you've learned more. Just relax. It's fun.
That's actually, I'm sure in the moment that was not as fun. No, but that's really funny. That's actually funny. I was going to talk about that. As we know, you study performance psychology and all of that. And I know that you've done podcasts and speeches and interviews and stuff. And I'm sure that we'll get into it later. But I feel like there's a lot you've probably learned in performance psychology that helps you with those interviews. Would you say that's the case?
Absolutely. Some people go to school young and you get to have those lessons going into those experiences. Mm-hmm. For me, I chose to go back to school later when I was 40 years old to finish my undergrad. And so when I went to school, I knew exactly what training I wanted and needed to better myself even in the things that I was doing.
I think that's the joy of going to school later, because most people don't even know what they want to do, when they're 18, especially.
You're a baby. You're just getting started.
Why is the world set up that way?
So
seriously, true. I think about that. I'm like, even now, I'm 23 and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know anything. I do have a clearer idea though.
Sure.
I think in time and through experiences. I want to go back, okay? We're talking about your story, and as we know, you went back to school later on. But I want to talk about you as a young mother, or even before that. Did you know you wanted kids?
I always knew I would, but I wasn't the type that sat around they're going to look like this and this is the age and I can't wait. I wasn't like that. I just knew it would happen. Mm-hmm. I knew it would be an adventure and it'd be fun, but I was just kind of living my life. And honestly, it happened a lot faster than I thought it would anyway. So it was just a fun journey, all of it, to see how it unfolded. Looking back, I was talking about this to Kinley yesterday and realizing how we think we have our plans and then life turns out the way it wants to anyway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yes, I agree. I feel like you can plan it all you want, and no matter what, it just will still, and that might be comforting to some people. It might be scary to some, but I think that I choose to have that be a comforting thing, that no matter what, something has you and is going to push you in the way that it needs to go, type of a thing.
Absolutely. It helps me even in business and everything all the time, just realizing that I can do my best planning, my best thinking, and at the end of the day, life is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And just believing that it happened that way for a reason. And it's a really peaceful feeling. It does help comfort me in hard times for sure.
Yeah. Even though I'm not a mother, I think you have a lot to teach people just about performance psychology in general, but also especially for the young parents out there. My mom is a great resource and she knows how it is. Parenthood is hard. It's beautiful and it's a journey, and it's a hard journey sometimes. And I think it would be great to have an episode dedicated to that and tools of resilience in that field especially. So thank you.
Yeah, parenthood is the best job in the world. It is hard and it's the best job. It can be both.
Yeah. I think if you want to touch on what we were talking about in the car with what parenthood is, and if you said it was a journey of a lifetime.
Well, a lot of people that study sport and performance psychology, they look at it from the sports angle because that's where the history of the study came from. But when we hired a performance psychologist, Dr. Craig Manning, to come into our own company and teach us about what performance psychology was, I realized that this applies to everything in my life and especially parenting. So right away, I just started thinking, parenting is the longest, most intense, beautiful, exciting game of life with the highest stakes, which is our family. And so I started relating everything I was learning in performance psychology to how I could apply it with the game that matters the most to me. People show up from across the world. They travel, they buy swag, they cheer, they cry, they root for their team. And, why do they do it? They do it because it's fun and it's joyful, and life is meant to be fun and joyful. So bringing that perspective into parenting is one of my biggest passions of life for sure.
So you said, I was actually going to ask you this a little later, but you said as you were in school, you realized it related to parenting. So were you interested in performance psychology before you knew it related to parenting?
Yes, because we hired Dr. Craig Manning in our company to help with our business growth. And we saw the easy fit of corporate training and development with our managers and our supervisors, and with your dad and I with our own development, with, I guess, the hope and desire that our business would be more stable and grow and our people felt supported.
Yeah.
And then once I started learning from him about the brain and neuroscience and everything that we can purposely do in our life to find resilience, I thought, geez, I can take every lesson I'm learning home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I would love to talk to him as well.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
That's awesome. I think from that, I would love to dive into just your family. And I know I'm part of the family, but talk to me about your family, your kids, where you grew up, like just how many kids you have. You have 7. Why? I'm just kidding.
Never the plan, honestly. People ask me and I just kind of just giggle every time because I was kind of a 4-kid tops person. I thought, 3, 4, something like that. Right when I met your dad, I came from a family of 5 kids. I was the oldest of 5. I did not take on the role of the most responsible oldest. My brother after me took that role. I was always very yellow, if you will, personality free. And I loved music and dance and creativity and people and learning. And so when I went in to start thinking about my own family, I wanted the energy of just people that I loved around me. When I met your dad, he already had sweet Sydney, and I fell in love with her right from the beginning. She was 11 months old when I first met her, and I just loved her. Eventually, we got married about 3.5 years later. And we kept adding girl after girl after girl after girl after girl after. And, we got up to 6 girls eventually, including Sydney. And we adopted little Jordan at the end, as you know, also raising our niece for about 5 years there at the beginning. So lots of kids.
Lots of kids, lots of girls. And it's so interesting because this interview, it's like, obviously I know all these things, but I'm going to need to pretend that I don't, right?
Yeah, you know.
But, wow, 6 girls. That's crazy. See, I grew up with that. Like, what?
Yeah.
6 girls. And now I think about it, I'm like, wow, that is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy in the best way. I have the best family, honestly. I'm so grateful for all my sisters, like built-in best friends. Like all of my bridesmaids were my sisters, and it was just
fun.
So awesome. But here's a hot seat question for you.
Ooh.
Is it easier to raise girls or boys?
I prayed for all boys because I remembered my brothers thinking I got this. And I was nervous about raising all girls. I think it's more about the personality than the gender. I really do. There are obviously things that girls and boys deal with differently, but I can't say easier or harder. To me, it's personality, and it's being there for each kid for who they uniquely are. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there is a little bit of a stigma of like, oh, girls are so this, and then boys whatever. But if we're talking real here, I think that whole demeanor with boys being easy has done them a disservice in life.
Yeah.
And I think that any kid needs parenting in the same ways. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've just thought about that. I wondered what your thought was on that, because you definitely are very experienced. I want to transition a little bit into being a stay-at-home mom. One, do you think that phrase is like a hard to hear phrase? Do you think that phrase is, what is the word, like demeaning in any way? I've heard people don't mind it at all. I've heard that there's a negative stigma to be called a stay-at-home mom. And I also hate when people say like, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. Like, that's not the hardest job in the world. I hate the just. Like, you are a stay-at-home mom, and that is the most important job. So I want to put that across to you and to everybody. So what do you think about that first?
Yeah, I'm actually really sensitive about the word.
Yeah.
I call it 4-letter word of just. And I learned that once from when I went to a conference and I said the word, I'm just a mom, to a woman doctor there that was there to support parenting. And she said, Janae, don't ever use the word just and parent in the same sentence. She said, we're all here to support you. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And I realized for the first time that, just is the worst swear word I can imagine. Worst 4-letter word I can imagine, because the word just in and of itself is like you're putting yourself below where you think you should be, when parenting is all about choice. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think it's very personal. So if a person chooses to be stay-at-home mom and that's where they feel like is the best fit for them, their partnership with whoever they are and their goals, then that's the right decision. Yeah. And if a parent chooses to be in the workforce and to have backup with the kids because they're the best version of themselves outside of the home you're working everywhere you go, then that's the best decision. I don't like the back and forth judgment of others' choices. That's the part that I would focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I ask, like, calling you a stay-at-home mom, I'm not meaning that in any way other than, like, seriously so important. So talk to me about those years of life. So you're on the tail end of the motherhood in terms of having 7 kids in a household. So talk to me about juggling that. Like, what was day-to-day like with all of those kids, all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, every day was different, right? Yeah. Because when the kids are young, they need you more physically. And it's like, help me pour my cereal, help me put my pants on, help me get to school, help me do my hair, 6 heads of hair in a row. It's very physical. And I always wanted to go to the park and feed the ducks or get outside and have adventure, just go on nature walks or scavenger hunts or things like that. And then as you get older, it's more mental and bigger kids, bigger problems in the way of long-term, just helping them be mentally healthy and happy and all those kind of things. So, what did I do every day? It was literally different every year, every day for the past 30 years of what I've done. I think as a parent, it's really important to be intuitive and to take time to reflect on each kid and yourself, not losing yourself in that process.
Wow. Let's go there then, because that's a big topic. Big topic in terms of even social media, like TikTok and all those things. Like, I'm very plugged in. And that's a huge topic of discussion of motherhood. There's a lot of people not wanting to be parents anymore. And there's like almost a whole movement. I don't know if you've heard of the 4B movement. That's more about men and how men are hard to deal with. So women are just opting out just completely. And there's a lot of fear around parenthood. Do you think everyone should be a parent?
Well, should is kind of like just, right? Where it comes down to personal choice again. I would always say that parenting is a good choice. And I've met parents from all different backgrounds. I've been a parent where I needed food stamps to help feed my kids. I've been a parent where some people would say, oh, well, she has the money to take care of her kids, so of course she's just fine. I've met parents that need resources and help from every angle, every perspective. And I will tell you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic background. It doesn't matter anything. What matters is that you are choosing that you want to do it and that you make the best of what you're doing. It's not always going to be pretty. It's always going to be interesting. It's always going to be exciting, but it's always worth the choice to parent, in my perspective.
In being a stay-at-home mom for those years, there's a lot of talk about society pushing moms to the side, forgetting about them. And I think some of that is true. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's a risk, right? Of course, I'm a big advocate for women's rights and women's movements and things so that women feel able to share what they feel and want to do and not be repressed. I have 6 daughters. I'm huge on that. I'm actually I help with Boulder Way Forward, which is a movement about encouraging women's leadership. So I'm big on that. I would just say maybe a cautionary tale of like in that journey of not forgetting. I have a training I wrote where part of the biggest, the focus in it is honoring the history of what we learned and innovating the future. And the marriage of the two is where the beauty comes from. So having a journey of, being strong women leaders and also honoring the choice and why so many people have chosen to do that in the past is parenting and to mother.
Gosh, I just have so many questions now. Was there a moment in time that you felt like you had lost yourself in motherhood?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would first say that's normal.
Yeah.
It's common. So if you feel that, there's nothing wrong with you. Because if you're a mom that cares about your kids, you're going to put energy and time and thought and emotion into it. And the more you do that, the more it draws that energy away from what you need. So it's literally a daily thing, if you can, to be aware. And that's, to either write in a journal or to reflect or to meditate so that you can recognize how much of my energy is still with myself and how much is leaving me so that you can balance the two and take care of yourself in the process.
I think there's a lot of moms, especially because I am friends with a lot of young moms now, that they're in that transitional period. And I think there's a lot of people that see that from the outside and it's a lot. It's beautiful, but it's a lot. And I think someone like you is so needed for things like this, because when I have kids, I don't want myself to be lost in it. And I was going to say this too. I feel like it's a relationship too, because every boyfriend or even my husband, there's been periods of times I've lost myself with them. Like I immerse myself into what they're interested in, into their friend groups.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I stopped doing my own hobbies, my own interests. I stopped playing guitar, like all these things. And then it's a little different because obviously they're your kids and there's just a different dynamic there. But for sure, there was a point in time where I'm like, wow, like, why am I doing that to myself? Like that's what makes myself the most happy and the most healthy.
Yeah. You want your kids to be able to see that part of you. You don't want them to remember. I remember a very clear day when I had this awareness that I was trying to get out the door somewhere with the kids and I was getting frustrated and come on and get your shoes and where's you lost your shoes again. And, I was kind of up in my head and frustrated. And then all of a sudden just hit me. I'm like, wait, do I want my kids to remember that we went on activities, but it was stressful the whole time?
Yeah.
Or is the point that maybe we're late to this activity, but my kids are enjoying being together and creating memories?
Wow. Obviously, I think most parents have the best intentions for their kids, right?
Yeah.
Like they're doing their best, but I think that's such a good reminder of like kids hold things in. Like they remember, even if they don't remember what happened, they remember the feelings that were there. And so if you're able to do the inner work as a parent, it's not only going to help you, but it's going to help your kids and then their kids. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I just remembered this quote. I hope I can say it right.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. It's this idea. It's not necessarily a quote. It's this idea that wherever the mom or the dad, but I'll say the mom, wherever the mom stops in their healing journey, that's where their child picks up from.
Wow, that's really powerful. And a lot of pressure.
Yes, exactly. And
yeah, I'm trying to decide how I feel about that.
Yeah.
In some ways, I agree where it's like, yeah, you're setting your kids up with more tools because if you've learned them yourself, you can pass them on. And at the same time, I think we as kids have different talents and skills that our parents do. And so you might be ahead of me I remember learning, I learn from my kids all the time. So you might be faster in one area that I wasn't able to become stronger at yet. And I can watch your journey. And then as a parent, I can choose to learn from my child.
Yeah.
So I do agree. I see the point of the quote where it's like, yeah, take on from where they left off. And I would say, hey, parents, realize that just because you're older doesn't mean you can't learn from your kids too.
And you're only human. It's your first time experiencing life just like your kids. I think that's a good thing for kids to remember. It's
have you heard that quote lately that says like, parents, go easy on yourself. You're a 5-year-old parent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's like you're just, and I've said it that way in different ways before, is like, this is your first time parenting, just like a kid.
I don't think
give
kids
yourself
get
some
that
grace
until they get older.
Yeah. Yeah.
You think your parents perfect, right? And they are, and they're perfect for you. But then you grow up and you're like, wow, that's hard work, beautiful work.
Yeah.
But hard.
Yeah.
Oh, this is random, but do you have any just like memories of your kids or your family?
It's so funny you asked me that because I already had one in my head. I'm like, should I share it?
I guess you're supposed to if I asked.
Well, I remember when we were moving out of our house before this one, or 2 houses ago, and I moved your dresser, and underneath it,
Stop! I remember this.
in black magic marker, it said, I hate my mom. And I thought, ouch,
I remember writing that.
But it's okay. Because I remember when my dad, I was mad at him once, and I taped papers all over my ceiling and from the bunk bed, I hate my dad. And I remember him seeing it. Yeah.
Wait, shut up. My kid's going to do that to me now.
Yeah, they are. I hope so. That's the whole point, is like, as a kid, you're so frustrated and you think your parents should agree with you and know everything, and they just don't. And they could be right and they could be wrong, and it doesn't even matter.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good story. I literally remember that. And my poor white carpet too. Like, I had like white carpet, black Sharpie. Who am I?
It was white. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's actually so funny. That's such a good memory. I find it funny. I find kids funny.
Oh, kids are hilarious.
Family stories in general are just...
I actually laughed when I saw it. I laughed and walked out of your room because it's like, sometimes you don't want your kids to see how funny you actually think it is.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was babysitting my nephew, there would be things he would do that I'm like, I should not laugh, but I really want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we touched briefly on going to school. Okay, so you said Craig Manning. That's what I was going to ask after your journey of being a stay-at-home mom is, what is that journey of knowing what you know for 27 years of life, being home? And obviously it's hard, but also being in your comfort zone in a way, stepping out of that and being like, I want to go to school again, right?
Yeah, I mean, like most things, it started way before that.
Yeah.
As a kid, in my family, it was just kind of expected that we went. It wasn't even talked about. But once I got to college, I realized, oh, I have no skills to be able to actually accomplish and finish this. And I met Dad early on, and we became really good. He taught me how to drop my first math class, and it was over. But we had so much fun, like, water skiing and snow skiing and snowmobiling. We played. And so when I started, our family, I was thinking, I never really got to finish that chapter of my life. I really respected my grandparents that saved for my education through, even after the Depression. He would pick up pennies in the high school to save for his future grandkids' education.
Wow.
He didn't buy anything frivolous ever because he wanted his grandkids to have an education. So I really did feel almost a weight of responsibility of like, if he invested in me that much, I wanted to be able to invest in myself as well. So I had my kids. I remember sitting down to help them with math and being like, well, dang, you're on your own. Sorry.
After a certain threshold, you're gone. You're out of here.
Yeah. It was like, and so when I just always knew that when it was time, when I wanted to finish that goal that I had set for myself. And that time didn't come for a really long time. But when it did, when it opened up and I met some people like Dr. Susan Madsen, she was helpful to help me get back in, and my parents supported whatever I chose to do.
Yeah.
Then I did it. I chose to jump back in.
Did you know you wanted to go to school to be a doctor? Like, did you know you wanted to do a Ph.D.? Or?
No, like I was the kid jumping out of the window in junior high, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like my teacher turned one day in home ec and I jumped out of the window. It was only like 4 feet high, I think.
Yeah.
And my friends were all laughing. I know now as an adult with ADHD that obviously I struggled to focus. So getting the PhD in a way is kind of like, oh yeah, watch me, I can do it. In fact, I don't know if I've told you this story, but when I went to graduate high school, I sat down with the high school counselor and he opened up the folder to review my grades, which were mediocre.
Yeah.
And he said, he got out his reading glasses and he said, oh, your teacher says here, I'm highly concerned about Janae's future and her ability to function in life.
What?
And I started laughing in this interview. And the counselor looked at me and he pointed at it and he turned it and showed me and he said, no, your 5th grade teacher actually wrote this in your permanent record. And I remember thinking back and going, I wasn't even that bad. Like I talked a lot.
Yeah.
And
why would a teacher say that?
Exactly. So in a way, no. I never, ever saw myself as being Dr. Janae Moss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like a, oh yeah, watch me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I love the subject. So it just works.
Gosh. What would you say to kids thinking about going to college? Like, if they should go, if they should not. I have, I guess, my own opinions, but I go back and forth all the time of what I think.
Yeah, and I do too.
Yeah.
And that sounds weird as your mother and as a person pursuing my PhD right now. Once again, I think it comes back to individual choice. I'm big on individual choice. What's right for you? Obviously, we don't want doctors, lawyers, dentists, people that haven't been professionally trained to have those jobs. So there's some avenues that are more important than others to get the higher level of education. But the thing that I love about education in general is that the more we learn, the more we realize that we don't know. And I think that makes us a more compassionate people, and it brings humanity to people that we're around, because I believe we're more patient the more we realize that the world is a big place. There's lots that we don't understand. And if we're an eternal learner, then we're going to experience this world differently than assuming we know everything and judging other people because they're different from ourselves. Yeah.
I think my journey has looked different than maybe even I thought, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I haven't, so I went to school for a little bit, for those who don't know, and I was in pre-med technically to be a nurse, and I was doing my MA, which is my medical assisting. So I was like learning shots and blood draws and like all that stuff. And I appreciate my time there. Like I appreciate learning, but I knew in that moment that I would not be happy, honestly, with nursing for me. And I could have shame about that, or I could just know that that's not for me and I'll find what's for me. And I will say my mom and I are very, very similar with what we're interested in. She's going to be starting her own podcast as well, and that's going to be geared more towards parenting, but we both just love seeing how people tick, stories, performance psychology, just humanity in it all, and how we can learn from it. So that's coming. That's just a little thing for you as well. Yeah, for those of you listening, like, you have so much time, and I know it doesn't feel like you have a lot of time, especially with college, especially if your parents are expecting you to go. I think being well educated is never a bad thing. Never a waste of time. But I also think find something you're passionate about, and that's incredibly important.
Absolutely. And then realize it's not always going to be awesome.
Yeah. There's so many work.
No matter what you go into, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And that doesn't mean you chose the wrong thing. It just means that that's life.
Oh, yeah. We were even talking about that briefly with my podcast. Just like, it's hard to set up and it's hard to go around and do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, am I having fun? Like, am I liking this? And I think I'm having a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, and fun as a word has really developed for me over the years, because it used to mean fun was laughing and fun was, doing cartwheels or with my friends or whatever. And fun to me now is like, are you fully living? Fun to me is the full range of emotion. Am I alive? Rather than numbing out or dissociating or doing things that take me out of my full existence.
Yeah, I love that. I'll have to like dive deeper into that someday. Maybe part 2.
Yeah, well, even with kids too. I think the first time I thought about that was with my kids. I learned so much teaching my kids.
Yeah.
Because I remember every time they'd go to a friend's house, I would say, "Did you have fun? Did you have fun? Did you have fun?" And then I realized, what am I teaching them? Am I teaching them that it was only worth it to go if there was fun? Or is there something that happened there? What did you do? What did you learn?
Yeah.
That's more fun for me.
Yeah. And hard work is fun.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, I mean, I always talk about Andrew Huberman, you know this, but dopamine is for motivation and drive, not necessarily the dopamine chemicals of like the happy chemical. Yes, it technically is, but it's more for the drive to get more. In hard things, you actually get dopamine if you train your brain to want to do those hard things and reap the reward of those hard things. So exercise is always a great example of that. Like, not every day do I want to go. Am I technically having fun? Yeah, I would say I am.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good example.
Yeah. I obviously would love to dive into what you've learned and what you would want to share with parents here. And I think to start that out, is there anything that you would want to say to your younger self as a mom?
Whew, those are all really good questions. Okay, I'm going to try to meld those questions together.
It's a lot. I tend to do that. So.
No, you and I actually think very similarly. I'm right with you. Okay, what would I tell my younger self as a mom? I would say that it is very important to trust yourself. So learn as much as you can, but you have an inner voice, an inner, some people call it intuition. Some people call it the spirit. Some people call it knowledge from school. Some people call it
a motherly instinct.
Yeah. You hear all these words, but really what it means is that you have a knowing inside of you about what is best for you and what's best for your family. And a big part of learning to mother is learning to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that goes even way before you end up being a mom. And the way, to me, I would say that ties into performance psychology is that, what is your self-talk? That is a big sport and performance psychology term. When you see, the guys playing basketball and they're on the line trying to make that shot, and you see them repeating something to themselves with their lips over and over because they've gotten to the habit of saying a certain phrase that yields a certain result. You see the same thing on the golf course or anywhere. People have their self-talk or their phrase that they're trying to remind themselves of. That is a big part of having the knowing inside of yourself. So if you're feeling like unsure of yourself as a mom, you're tired, you're frustrated, all these normal thoughts and feelings that you have, what is your purposeful self-talk that you're telling yourself over and over and over? And one way I help people discover that is to journal. I've often talked to you about journaling and recognizing, okay, what are all the things that I tell myself that are benefiting me, that I'm creating these neural pathways in my mind. And sometimes it's intentional. Most of the time it's not intentional. Yeah. But the more we can be aware of, like, do I wake up and I say, oh, like, I'm so tired. I can't do this again. I need to go back to bed. I'm frustrated. There's all these thoughts. Are you saying that more often in your mind? Or are you saying, this is hard, but I can do it? Or I love being with my kids and they're going to drive me crazy today, but I love it. I'm choosing it. Whatever your chosen phrases, I would say be intentionally noticing what you're saying over and over again for your self-talk and then adjusting it so that it's benefiting you, not taking you down.
I love that. We don't have to put this in, but I have an interesting question for you.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience postpartum depression?
I actually did. And that's, some people that know me would say Janae wouldn't have, because I'm naturally pretty upbeat and even keel. But after Ella and Hallie, I experienced postpartum depression. I didn't realize it until after, I think Ella was probably about 4 to 6 months old. I remember looking back and thinking, I haven't felt like me. What's right now? It's normal right after birth to feel like that because your body is recovering, you're tired, all
Hormones,
those things. But the depression part, I hadn't ever felt that before. The deep hole of depression that I felt like I couldn't get out of. Definitely after Ella, I did. And that's when I I started writing what I call my 10 joys, my 10 loves. And I kept a notepad by my bed. And I remember getting up every day and I couldn't think of a reason to get out of bed, even though I had kids running all over the house. I felt like I couldn't keep up. Business was hard, everything. And I remember writing 10 things that I loved. And that came down to like music, calling a friend, going for a drive, reading, writing. I know my loves.
Yeah.
And what I would do each day is like, okay, today I need to do number 2 and number 7. And I would prescribe it for myself. And it was very intentionally. I had to dig myself out of the hole. And then after Hallie, again, I knew going into it that this could happen again, and it did. And even knowing it, I thought maybe I could control it more.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. It was dark with Hallie for a while. I don't think quite as long because I was more aware. But
more aware.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of women that experience postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And it's one of my fears, let's say.
Yeah.
Like, for sure. I think just understand that. Experiencing depression, but with the 10 joys, is there anything else that you would, I guess you called prescribe, which is funny because you literally are going to be a doctor. Is there anything else you would prescribe, let's say, to young moms experiencing that maybe right now?
Oh, yeah. I want to get out like all my research and my notes and everything, but
this was random, so I know you weren't prepared for this.
No, for sure. Prescribe. This sounds counterintuitive as a mom, but I would say sleep. It's really hard to get sleep when you're nursing or when you're bottle feeding at night or taking care of other kids in the day. Say it's not your first baby, you have other kids that are like needing your attention and the baby, and it's so much pressure. But I would prescribe being okay with handing off your baby, maybe to somebody that's willing to hold your baby so you can take a nap, or being okay when your baby takes a nap in the day to sleep at the same time. I know you could get up and wash the bottles, or you could pick up, but you really, to get as much possible sleep as you can, is paramount.
Yeah,
sleep is something that rejuvenates our mind, our body, our soul, everything, so that we can be the best, happiest version of ourselves. So sleep, self-talk. I would say that social connections are really important.
Ooh, yeah.
So having people around you that you trust, that you can call or that you can go and see, and just be able to vent and be able to ask their advice, their opinions. And at the end of the day, do what you believe is right for your own kids. I'm a big believer in that, but just somewhere you can go to have connections.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of moms looking for connection too. Just finding a way to try and bring anyone together has been hard. I always say like social media isn't social anymore and it's made us less social. But yeah, I think whoever's listening to this will need to take a lot of steps to find those moms, but those moms are out there that are wanting the same things as you, and that's incredibly important, and you can find friends for a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you surround yourself with friends that are builders instead of that tear you down, that's huge too. And I think sometimes when you feel like you're losing yourself in parenting, to be able to have people around that help you recognize and remember the beautiful parts of yourself, the strengths that you have. Because one of the biggest indicators of being resilient, there's actually a term called parental self-efficacy, and it's created by a researcher named Albert Bandura. And he basically proved that we have higher resilience and personal self-efficacy, parental self-efficacy as well, if we can look back at the past and remember the things that we've accomplished, the things we've overcome. Then we can go, okay, I did it before. Even if it's a kid, when you're a kid, I ran this race and I finished it when I was 12. I can do this as a parent. I can overcome and do this thing.
There are a lot of universal truths with this type of work, and everyone says it in their own way, but I've learned over and over again the same truth. So do you know David Goggins?
Yeah.
So he calls it the cookie jar. And basically whenever he wants to fill his cookie jar with things he's done, whenever he needs a cookie or something along the lines of that, whenever he needs a cookie, he can pull it out and remember those things. And he does it through experience. And I think that's people either learn those truths through experience or through education, or mostly actually both. And so I love that you brought that up because it's helped me. I've actually done that exercise before and I love that, especially with parenting. I know I'm not a parent, but anyone listening who's not, do that for anything. you know, like that. There's a lot of truth in that, a lot of power in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, you are being educated right now. You know, I mean, just by interviewing and listening to podcasts and reading and all the ways that we teach ourselves these things, we can't learn everything on our own.
Yeah.
I don't think we can in one lifetime. So
Yeah.
so to be open to learning from others is powerful.
Do you have anything else you would like to share with parents? I know you have so much curriculum. I guess, what is the culmination of what you're learning? Like, what is the message? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say honestly, it's that we are meant to have joy. We are here in this experience and all of its many flavors so that we can experience deep and profound joy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be easy, but it is worth it. And remembering, you brought up the word remember. I love that. Remembering the things that are important to us, that bring us back to our grounded self and our intuition and our knowing is what's going to get us through the hardest times.
I know you're writing a children's book.
Yeah.
How much would you want to share about that? Or I have seen pictures, you guys, and it's so amazing. It's so amazing. I don't have kids, but I'm going to buy it and I'm going to read it.
I'll give you one for free. You're my kid and they're going to be my grandkids. So.
But I don't know if you want to share like the pillars of it or one of the pillars, but I know there's pillars in that and they were amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important, you know, when you get into higher education and you get into people that help families, a lot of times it gets so big into research and big ideas and big books and big thoughts that it doesn't get to the home level.
Yeah.
It doesn't transition into an actual parent that's going to read it and care because they don't have time to read research when they're just trying to get up and put their kids, find their kids' shoes again. And so, my partner and I, Barbara Levitt, we decided that we are going to take hard concepts that are proven to help families and we're going to talk about it in a language that is fun for kids to read and fun for parents to read with their kids.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so
The goal
excited.
is to be done by this fall. And dare I say that out loud and being recorded, but it's very, very close to being done, as well as the curriculum that goes with it to teach about what's being learned in the book.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited for it, honestly.
Me too. Thank you.
It's so cute. I'm super happy I looked at my notes because I did have a little topic that I think would be very important to touch on as well. I'm kind of following the phases of life of parenthood, right? So there's like the newborn phase and the toddler phase, and you're going through phases as they're going through phases, if that makes sense. I know that there's people out there that are going to be, I hate the term because it's sad, but empty nesters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a sad way to say it,
It
right?
is.
Like you picture this bird lonely crying and like all the chicks have flown the coop. You know, it's just like any other phase, you know, whether you're going to elementary to junior high to high school to college, but you know, like every phase has the good parts and the hard parts, right? So I am definitely coming up on the phase where last few kids in high school and, you know, almost done with high school. And what does that look like? Well, for me, I was a very young parent, so I feel like I have a lot of life to live and I hope to enjoy it, you know, with my grandkids and to be able to keep making memories. But I think that's why it's really important to always continue to recreate ourselves. Yeah. And this is the same as when you're a young mom too. Like, okay, my life looks different. I can't pack up and go to the beach by myself and do a podcast alone anymore. Right. So what does that look like? I'm recreating. And if you get stuck in a phase where you're not able to recreate the next phase, it can feel, well, stuck. You know, I
hate that feeling.
Yeah. And so right now I feel like I am in a phase of like recreating what is the next, you know, 40 years of my life. I don't know how long I'm going to live. I'm like, how old would that be? Almost 90.
You better.
Yeah. So I'm recreating now. And even as a young mom, like I remember I wrote a blog I started in 2007 and I was writing and that was part of my recreation of learning my voice. And even when I was a stay-at-home mom with dad, you know, we strategize about business every night, every day for at least an hour to 2 hours about what we were going to do and how we were going to grow. And because I built business with him for 30 years now. And so even though people don't see me in the office, that doesn't mean that I haven't been building business with him.
Absolutely.
And also on that note, I think dad has been really good at letting me recreate myself and just kind of, I guess, watching and saying, okay, Janae wants to go back to school now. I'm going to support her. Janae needs to be able to go run in the mountains right now to feel grounded. I'm going to support her. And when I went into any business meeting with Dad, he would always introduce me as his business partner and expect that everybody in the room would treat me as such.
Yeah.
So he let me recreate myself and have that be part of my identity, even though I was at home with the kids most of the time.
How do you recreate yourself? What are the steps?
Oh, Brighton, you're so naturally good at this. Steps of recreation. I think part of it is just being aware. Like, I think in the world we naturally numb out, right?
Oh, gosh.
Right?
It's a whole episode.
I mean, it's like, I just want to go shopping, or I want to go golfing, or I want to watch TV shows, or I want whatever. They're all good things. They're not bad things, but it's like, are we being aware with what we're doing with our time? Are we aware of our natural skills and talents? Because if we are, and we don't let all of those things distract us from our life living, the fun living, then we can say, oh, recognizing this brings me joy. I felt happy when I did this, or I felt fulfilled when I served in the community, or whatever it is. And then you can add more of those things in, maybe like a recipe. You need a little dash of like service, a little dash of like getting outside, whatever it is, so that you're always aware of what recipe you're creating.
It goes back to childlike wonder. I've kind of had that like interest for a while of like, what did I like when I was a child? And for those of you who listened to the other episodes, I've definitely touched on this. Definitely. I think that's kind of the fun about my podcast is I kind of dive into whatever I'm learning in that moment.
Yeah.
I just think always going back to what you're interested in and trying not to lose yourself, which I think this perfectly ties into not losing yourself, right? How can you tap into what you like again? And I totally agree. I think it's a recipe. I think it's a recipe for life, and always you might feel pizza for a decade and then pasta for another decade. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is funny though, because I think that, we're creating this recipe, and what does it look like? And oftentimes when I coach women, professional women, I will bring it back to what things made you laugh as a kid, what things, and the world a lot of times teaches us you have to be serious, you have to, for heck's sake, I broke my wrist roller skating. I'm like almost 50 years old, almost 49, but
got a pink cast.
Pink cast and henna at Disney World, It's like, we can choose to live and choose to remember those things, or we can choose to numb out and be the responsible adult that's like always annoyed and frustrated and upset. And I choose the other.
Well, and like I've said this before, why, when you look back on your life, like why would you want to live in a way that you're not happy? Like that's the whole point.
It takes energy. This is the thing. It takes energy to be mad all the time.
Yes.
And it takes energy to choose to do things that bring you joy and happiness. So where are you putting your energy?
Yeah. And easier said than done.
Easier said than done. Absolutely.
Granted, I'm not always a happy-go-lucky girl.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, when I say happy, I guess I more mean intentionally living than like, oh, I'm laughing and I'm funny all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've seen that a few times where moms, well, okay, I say moms, but it's because I'm around more moms than dads, right?
Yeah.
How would I explain this? It's not like they wouldn't want to work on themselves, but let's say it's easier to focus on what the kids need.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's really, which is one reason I wrote a children's book, because I also have training for parents to identify their voice and to help them be passionately leading in what they care about. Parents most often will choose to invest that money into the kids, which is a good thing. But it's kind of like the oxygen mask on the plane. Like if we are keeping ourselves the most I think robust, fullest version of our self, joyful version, we have to remember who we are and to try to work on that.
Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself.
If there's anything left that you want to say to parents, as well as where can people find you? I'm sure that there's going to be people listening to this and wanting to find you. You do coaching, which I've been a part of, which has been amazing. So anything like that you would like to say?
Yeah, I used to be more out in social media, and then I retreated, honestly, when I went back to school. All my energy went into that, and now I'm starting to push myself to get back out there again.
Yeah.
Because it's important. I'm learning it for not just myself, but to share. Not everybody gets the chance to learn what I'm learning, and I want to share what I'm learning so people can enjoy that information. So I'm really just starting my Instagram right now, and it's Janae.Moss. Eventually be Dr. Janae Moss.
Okay.
I can't do that yet.
I'll tag it as well in the description.
Yeah, and then, I'm on Facebook, but really I'm just getting started. I would say probably the Instagram is the best place to find me right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I know that your book's coming out, as well as you talked about a next book one day.
Yes, it's actually probably fourth to half of the way written.
Wow.
But I decided to wait on it because I want all of the information and research I'm learning in my Ph.D. program to be part of this book. And it is going to be about sport and performance psychology for parenting and playing the most important game of life. That's what it's going to be. But I want it to be engaging and fun and bringing in the research and referring to it, but just sharing lots of cool stuff.
I love it.
That's on hold for a minute.
Thank you so much for taking the time doing this. We also went to Disney World, which is amazing.
So fun.
Out here in the beautiful beaches of Florida. It's incredible, and I really appreciate not only you as a person, but you as a mom.
Thanks, Brighton. I love you.
I'm very, very grateful for you.
Thanks.
And
Brighton.
Your teachings. I just can't believe I get a mom that shows me, not only when I was young, but still continuously shows me how important it is to keep learning and always just being so joyful as well, just showing me how to be positive, how to be happy. You are like the best role model.
Thanks, Brighton. I'm so proud of you. And I know if you're not watching this podcast on YouTube, it's the only podcast I watch on YouTube because it is gorgeous. And you take the time to show people joy by getting outside. And it really, if I had to list, nature is one of my top 10 loves. So it's worth it. It's worth it to tune in and see where you are now and in the future, because sky's the limit. You really have so many fun things ahead of you. I'm so excited to watch.
Thank you.
And I've learned so much from you as my child, and I'm honored to be able to spend so much time with you as you've grown up. I'm so happy.
Thank you for your endless support.
Of course, always. I love
you. Okay, let's go jump in the ocean.
Heck yeah.
Woo! Bye, everybody.
See ya.